At the beginning of the Three Musketeers, D'Artagnan leaves his home in Gascony and travels to Paris with an old horse and a letter of introduction to Monsieur de Treville, who is the leader of the Musketeers. D'Artagnan wants to be a musketeer, but he isn't very qualified. After traveling for a while, D'Artagnan finds himself in Meung, where he meets Athos, Porthos, and Aramis by running into Athos's shoulder, pointing out that Porthos's belt isn't fully gold, and picking up a handkerchief that Aramis dropped and handing it to him, which is somehow offensive. All three of them challenge D'Artagnan to a duel, so he accepted. But when it came time for them to duel, they all ended up having to fight against some bad guys anyway, so they became friends. Meanwhile, D'Artagnan starts to fall in love with a girl named Constance Bonacieux.
This could be the start of something new. It feels...
Also, the Duke of Buckingham is having an affair with the Queen of France, who is obviously the wife of the King of France, which is not a very good thing. So Queen Anne of France gives the Duke of Buckingham some diamond tags that were given to her by her husband as a sign of affection. Then the Cardinal comes in and he wants revenge on Queen Anne of France because she didn't love him, and he knows that she gave away the diamond studs to the Duke of Buckingham. So the Cardinal's like, yeah, let's throw a party and you've got to wear those studs, but she gave them away, so that's not good because now the studs are in England and they're in Paris and the distance. So the Queen is trying to get people to help her get the studs back in time for the party, and so D'Artagnan is like, hey, I'll do it.
I volunteer as tribute!
And he takes along for Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, and they all eventually get injured or disappear on the trip, so D'Artagnan and his servant are the only people that make it through the whole trip. D'Artagnan arrives to find the Duke, but when he gets there, he realizes that two of the diamond studs that the Queen gave to him are missing. To solve the problem, the Duke has to make new studs. D'Artagnan eventually got the studs and took them back to the Queen in time for the party. And his reward from the Queen for that was a rendezvous with Madame Bonacieux. She makes a date with him at a pavilion, but she never shows up. Basically what happened is she was kidnapped. Next, D'Artagnan is going back through the towns with his servant Planchet and trying to find Athos, Porthos, and Aramis. They find Porthos and Aramis at the first two inns they stop at, but they're still too injured to keep going. Then they keep on and they find Athos at another inn and they get kind of loopy. Athos starts talking about how there was this woman a long time ago that ruined one of his friends because they were in love, but he didn't know that she was a criminal, so he was really heartbroken. Later on, the Three Musketeers and D'Artagnan all arrive back in Paris. They find out that they need to come up with their own money to have the right equipment for the war, so they're not happy anymore. They're not very happy people. Then D'Artagnan didn't make a good decision with this woman because he wanted in return this really valuable ring. That they could sell in order to get the money for their equipment, which he ended up doing. He got the ring, they sold it, they had enough money. But the woman he had an affair with was an agent of the Cardinal, who is not a good person, and the woman is an even worse person, and her name is Milady. D'Artagnan found out she had a fleur-de-lis branded on her shoulder, which marks her as a criminal. And Milady doesn't get very happy that he knows this, so she sends out two assassins to try to kill him. She also sends him poisoned wine, but he doesn't die in either of these cases, so that's fine. Then Athos, Porthos, and Aramis eavesdrop on a conversation between Milady and the Cardinal, and she's charged with going to England to persuade someone to kill the Duke of Buckingham. In return, she wants D'Artagnan dead. The Three Musketeers decide to send a letter to Tours to warn the Queen about the plot against Buckingham, and they send a lackey to England to warn Milady's brother-in-law about her coming. when Milady arrives in England, she's quickly escorted into a room and like locked there, but she convinces her jailer to let her go free. So Milady gets on a boat and goes to France, where Constance Bonacieux is hiding because she was kidnapped. D'Artagnan is really happy when the Queen says that he can go see Madame Bonacieux, but he gets there a little too late because by that time Milady has already poisoned her. So she dies.
Say something, I'm giving up on you.
So then Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan track down Milady and put her on trial. So now she's going to be executed. And then Athos, Porthos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan arrive back to the war, and the cardinal requests to see D'Artagnan, and he gives D'Artagnan an opportunity to be a lieutenant in the Musketeers. But he thinks he should offer it to one of his friends. Athos doesn't want it. Porthos is going to marry a rich woman, and Aramis is going to become a preacher. So D'Artagnan takes it, and then Monsieur Bonacieux disappears, and that's the end. So basically this book is not happy at all. But as D'Artagnan would say, all for one and one for all. Thank you. And so when Milady arrives, oh, pain. It's her hair.
$1. $1. $1. $1.
Aramis is going to become a preach.